Hey, I'm Jolt. Welcome back to the Sketch Your Mind conference recordings. We've reached session 13 out of 16, and today we're jumping onto a bold, mind-bending roller coaster ride with Nick Sousanis. If you're new to the series, you'll find all the resources linked below, including the big Excalibur whiteboard, where I'm collecting notes from every session. A few words about Nick. He's a comics author, educator, and the creator of Unflattening, the first doctoral dissertation drawn entirely as a comic and later published by Harvard University Press. His work challenges the limits of traditional academic thinking, showing how visual forms can expand what we are able to perceive and understand. As head of the Comics Studies program at San Francisco State University, he's dedicated to building learning environments that spark discovery. On a personal note, what Nick talks about here resonates deeply with my own thinking about what I call 4D PKM, moving beyond text and tapping into our spatial visual wiring to think more clearly and more originally. He captures far better than I ever could the cultural blind spot we have around visual thinking and why it matters. In this session, Nick explores what he calls our escape from flatness. He shows how drawing can pull us out of the linear, fixed world of text and into a space where words and pictures work together. He talks about how comics open up new dimensions of thinking, why the messy act of drawing is a real cognitive process, and how the structure of a comic page mirrors the way our minds jump around across ideas. The whole talk is illustrated with his incredible artwork. At the end of the video, you'll hear the music I composed for this session. If you'd like to support my work, you can get the conference album, join the next visual thinking workshop, grab my book, Sketch Your Mind, or try the Obsidian Excalibur plugin. All the links are in the description below. And now, settle in for a wonderfully expansive session with Nick.
I'm Nick Sousanis. I'm a comics maker and professor of comics. And as the introduction said, I'm most known for this work on flattening. So I thought I'd take you through a teeny bit of it to set up where we're headed. This was my dissertation, drawn entirely in comics form and came out as a graphic novel later. And the simple premise, it's about this nightmare of flatness, this limitation of possibilities, where we forget the wonder of what might be and sort of replaced by how it is. And because I had that word unflattening in my mind, I was familiar with Edwin Abbott's 1880s novella Flatland. And maybe some of you are familiar. Flatland is the story of the geometric inhabitants of this two-dimensional world. So circles and squares and triangles and lines. And they know how to move east and west and south and northwards, but they have no concept of upwards. They can't conceive of anything off their plane of existence. And we can all sort of look down at a flatlander and say, well, that's ridiculous. Of course, there's upwards, right? But what are the things outside of what can't we not think of because it's outside of our experience? What is upwards for us? And as I was working in an institution of education, I really wanted to critique that institution of education as a kind of flattening, where things are done to us, a series of steps, a series of recipes, and that our learning ends up getting put into boxes, whether it's boxes of time, boxes of space, or boxes of subject. So things are all separated out, and you start to take those boxes into yourself and see them as limitations, and see them as real rather than artificial. And that we start to get our thinking lined up, and specifically, because here I am doing a doctorate, why is a 12-point type double-spaced, 1 by 1 by 1 by 1.5 inch margins, what good thinking looks like, and why are images not? And what do we fail to see when we're only thinking through one channel? And what might we make visible when we come through multiple? I inserted this page about my dog, partly as an apology, because I'm sort of talking about ways of seeing, but I really meant ways of knowing. But I think it sums up a big part of the idea, in that we know a dog's sense of smell is stronger than yours and mine. But what's really true is that it's more nuanced, which means a dog can know, I'm just in my own room, but if we were in front of you, I might see the shape of a table, I might see what the microphone looks like and all those things. But a dog knows who was there a few hours before, the day before, maybe as far as a week before. So the dog has a kind of upwards that we just, kind of senses that we just don't have access to. And so on flattening came this really simple idea that looking through this eye is not the same as looking through this eye. And when we have both of them, it allows us to navigate the world in a more dimensional way. And we don't have to stop at just two. So for me, comics was this way, not just to return to something that I'd love to do as a kid, which I'll say more about in a minute, but it was a way to breathe in the worlds of both image and text, and maybe step out of some of my own limitations and see the flatness of them. So it becomes an argument for interdisciplinarity, it becomes an argument for multimodality, and an argument for doing stuff visually. And I think this little tiny panel from it kind of sums up everything else I'd want to say about it for now. To prepare good thinkers, we need to cultivate good seers. And I think we tend to dismiss images as, things that go up on the wall or things that are fun to look at or talented. But I think they're really key to how we are good thinkers. So I didn't just show up at school and say, I'm going to draw my dissertation. I was a maker as a kid. I have a much older brother who read comics to me, so like Batman is my first word. And I made this superhero locker man through high school, and he makes a cameo appearance in Unflattening. But when I came to university, comics was not a thing you could do, not a thing you could study. And even if it had been, I think I wouldn't have seen it as something sort of intellectual. Like I wanted to do smart things, and it just you didn't. The perception of comics wasn't that. I studied mathematics then, and so I have this interesting observation is, as somebody who studied mathematics, you tell people you do that, and they say, "Oh, you're so smart." And now somebody known for making their art, they say, "Oh, you're so talented." And I really feel like in my case, I think I was a very talented mathematician. I was very clever at figuring things out. I don't know how smart or not I was. And as a comics maker, I see my students and they're often far more talented than I am. But I think the art making has allowed me to be smarter than I could be without it. So I think one of the goals of my work and the goals of my teaching is really, how do you heal that rift, to not have this division between smart and talented, but really see these are all part of being human. And really the work that artists do is very, very smart stuff. And we shouldn't be dismissing it as talent. So as I said, I now get to run a comics program. I went from not being able to study such things to running my own program. I draw my syllabi, try to embody what I'm teaching to them. I just made a mini comic as a syllabus for this most recent class. We do some side projects. I've been working on a project on making comics accessible for blind readers, which I know sounds like a sort of impossible thing. It's a big challenge, and I've got a lot of resources if anybody's interested in such things. My colleague and I made a comic about this challenge. So it's both an accessible comic, so there's an audio version, but it specifically talks about how do you do this? How do you make the visual accessible through other means? And we even tried with Unflattening to make an audio version of it. And for my take on it, I made both an audio version with a tactile diagram to sort of ground you. It's a very difficult challenge, and it's particularly difficult with my work. My students do a lot of cool things. So I'll give you a quick tour of what they do. The sort of heart of our program is that we study and we play and see that those activities aren't so different. And I think, we all learn through play as small children, and somehow we forget that as we get older. And I really think the core of our program is to remind people how much we learn through play. So students make comics about our program, about what comics can do. They make comics about nonfiction subjects, on microplastics, comics on Corsi Rosenthal boxes. They make unusual comics as embroidered. They make mini comics. They got me making mini comics, so I give them away a lot. Some of them come with tremendous skill, really capable artists. Some of them are exploring philosophy. But I think at the heart of it, this is made by students, they say, we learn that how you think is more important than how you draw. And I think that's really the heart of it. And I'm going to close the student part with some examples here with one more quote. I think people tend to think of comics as a prose plus illustration. And I think it's better to think about it as the poet, as the cartoonist Seth says, comics equals poetry plus graphic design. And that sort of removes some of that pressure to be like a facile illustrator, super talented, and allows you to bring in other things. So we play around with things like pictureless comics. And this was a student who was not really into drawing, really liked the class, but so she made this was a final project about dealing with domestic abuse, and it was all done through text, but really powerful thing. This student really never got into drawing at all, but he made this comic about his grandmother who died from Alzheimer's. And I just want to show you the 3 panels where he didn't draw anything. And in that he writes, I didn't know my grandma. I was told about her. This person no longer existed. And then she was nobody. Like, he really understood the sort of design and poetic nature of it to get across his ideas. This student, so again, you wouldn't describe this student as talented, very shy, not comfortable drawing, but made this thing that really said so much about her because she understood how to use the medium. So it says here with these negative words, sometimes she could feel the weight of the words on her shoulders and hear from this sun all these positive words emanate. It says, but she is strong. This is a story about a girl who couldn't fit in a box, and they laughed from their boxes that fit as she contorted and twisted, unable to find a place. And the final page from this excerpt. So she makes her own box out of words, sounds, and pictures, and soon she learns that there is no need for borders, that boxes restrict her unnecessarily since she can go anywhere she wishes. So this student didn't suddenly become talented, but she really became smart about what she could do with the form and how she could use the form to access things that she didn't know about herself. And I think that's what I really see as myself as a comics maker and with my students. So comics, what are these things? I think, we're in this sort of golden age where, like, all of our entertainment is sort of dominated by superhero things, which, some of these that you recognize come out of the 60s. These other two you recognize come out of the late 30s. And comic books themselves come out of the earlier in the 30s. And before that, the sort of birth of what we recognize as modern comic strips comes from the Yellow Kid in the 1890s. All of these things predate film, television, and even radio there. But we can look farther back. The Swiss artist Rudolf Topfer is now called the grandfather of comics for these things that look exactly like comics. How much impact they had at the time is hard to say, but he's doing things that look like comics. And if we go farther back, we see things that look a lot like comics, from illuminated manuscripts to tapestries to codices, Trajan's column, Egyptian murals, and even, going 30,000 years back, we see people trying to make sense of their world through picture stories, as old as we've been us. And it's not to say Lascaux is a comic book, because it's not, but it is to say that sensibility is really part and parcel of being human. And I think we've tended to forget these things, and it's exciting to have events like this that remind us. So a little teeny bit about how comics do their thing, the affordances of them. And I like to start with Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, is a really, really seminal work from 1993, and his definition is a good place to start. And he says, juxtapose pictorial and other images in deliberate sequence. So if you take my fist and you draw a nice box around it, and then we put my fist extended and we draw another box around it, we have two static images. Nothing happens in comics. Comics don't do anything, but the action happens by you. The reader animates the static and transforms it into the kinetic. And on that, because comics don't do anything, the passage of time has to be written in space. And here I've redrawn another 30,000-year-old. This is a lunar calendar. And how do you make sense of the moon? How do you make sense of it changing every night? Well, what could they do? Well, they could make notations on a surface and see how it changed each day and record that. And again, I won't say that this is a comic, But that way of understanding time, graphically noting things down in a spatial sequence, again, is this fundamental human thing. So comics that don't move do these really interesting things about handling time, because time is kind of relative on the page. We can feel the experience of time, but it's not really happening because they don't move. It's not like film at all. So just a couple, this is a funny example. Much better when I'm doing this in person, so I can tell when you laugh, but well, that sucked. All this, the repetition allows us to see this woman aging. Here in this more recent comic by Tom Gauld, I get tired of hearing about so-called infinity pools, so I created a genuine one. This is my first length. Good luck. And the repetition here and the aging of the character, impressive. So the other aspect that I think is really key about comics is, well, yes, in my page, sure, you read it sequentially, left to right, top to bottom, but because it's visual, you can't help but start to take the whole thing all in at once, making connections from the lower right back to the upper left and all across. All of that, the fragments all start to hold together. And in fact, do you read the words first or the text first? And that all starts to become intertwined. Do you read rather associations that stretch web-like across the page, or do you see the spider web and then jump to that? That sort of braiding between the two, fancy word for that is rhizomatic, really shifts comics into a different way of thinking. And I like this example. This is from Watchmen, for people who might know that. Dr. Manhattan is this time-displaced character, but he really stands in for the reader. His awareness of the page, the timelessness of the page is how we read it. And he says in this middle panel, there is no future, there is no past. Do you see? And so, sure, we read this left to right, top to bottom. And so, but the lower left and the lower right panels actually takes place 30 years before the rest of the scene and going on. So that time is all sort of happening at once. So comics do these really neat thing where they have both the sequential, the ways we read, and the simultaneous. So that's, we move through time sequentially, linearly, but our thoughts are, something I say makes you think of something. You're thinking about what you did before, you're anticipating what you're doing later. That's all happening kind of simultaneously. And comics allow you to access both modes at once. So I think the static and flat nature of comics is kind of a superpower, because we care about both the individual drawings and the meta drawing. So some other comics examples to demonstrate this. This is Marc-Antoine Matou, The Museum Vaults. It's a comic about the Louvre. And if I showed it to you one panel at a time, you'd miss this triangle or pyramid that goes through it, which represents this significant piece of the Louvre. Frank King's Gasoline Alley from the 1930s, the character bumbles sequentially through what is a static simultaneous scene. And it's even, despite that being weird, it's a little bit weirder because he keeps starting at the left. He keeps starting at the left, which makes no sense if you think about it. But you don't think about it because you accept that you read left to right, left to right, left to right. So comics do these things sort of naturally weird that you take for granted. So for Mysterious Polyp here, he's got the panels are sequential, and then they sort of collapse, and the character comments on that. Simultaneity, the awareness of so much happening at once, is now the most salient aspect of contemporary life. So comics let you do a lot of weird things. This little guy is trying to get the fruit. Like, what do I do? I can't reach it. What do I do? I can't reach it. I'm going to walk away. He walks away, but no, he doesn't walk away. He walks backward through the panel because time and space are mushed in this way. So the panels they can both mark time, but they can also be part of the story. In this Young Avengers comic, they're like another dimension that they can access and step out of. In this comic by Nina Paley, the panel becomes a psychological dimension. So to come back to myself here, how do I put this into practice? So as I said, I was a comics maker as a kid. I have this gap. Then when I come back, I made some comics around the 2004 presidential election. And my first one is I'm the narrator, and I'm sort of talking to the reader, and I'm showing up. And that was very influenced by Scott McCloud's understanding comics and the ways that he worked. But I made a second one right after that, and I really wanted to, find my own way. And I was influenced by, this is by Alan Moore and Melinda Gebbie. It's from a 9/11 tribute comic called This Is Information. And they were really playing with image text resonance and sort of visual and verbal metaphors going on there. So my follow-up piece was about voting, or a show of hands. So every single panel had something to do with hands. And so that really sparked where I would go going forward. This was a comic on games and art from a thing we did in Detroit. It's using all fictional rabbits to make its point in each panel. Another political comic on the silliness of red and blue using fictional kids, red and blue characters. And I've continued that. And this is the kind of stuff when I said, hey, Columbia, I want to come to do my doctoral work here. I said, this is what I can do. And somehow they let me in. So my first class, I had a class with then 90-year-old professor of aesthetic education, Maxine Green, and I made a comic about her energy, not what she looked like, but how she felt. And she felt like this dynamic top. Later made a chapter in a book on qualitative research, so using stories as research. And it's a comic that's either about doing research, or it's about drawing, or it's about how you see. And because I've left it all in metaphor and stripped out all the specific language, it's up to you what you think it's about. So that was my first formal decision, was to pull out, to stop sort of illustrating and really find metaphorical ways to get at things. And that continued. I made a comic on climate change for Nature in 2015. And, like, how do you handle that massive problem? I kept thinking about it, and I thought, well, the Apollo project was this massive thing, and the talks were in Paris, so the building, I was thinking about the scaffolding of both. And I pitched this idea to the editors, like, I'm going to show the scaffolding being built, this framework being built every time. And they was like, we don't know what you're drawing, but go for it. And then it turned out that the first climate conference was called the Framework Convention. I was like, oh, this was a thing. And I won't go through it now, but in each page, there's this frame being built across it. And by the end, it sort of takes over the page. But so that use of metaphor really helped me structure my work. The other formal decision is to embody the ideas in the shape of the page. Really think about how the reader moves through it. So in this page, it's about ruts or routine. And I'm contrasting a typical commuter who goes out and back with my wife's commute in Manhattan, which was different directions and different each day. And, I could have, in an illustrational sense, said, well, here's one and here's the other, and sort of left it at that. But I really wanted the page to do it. So in the background, the commute is just this repeated grid. And on the foreground, I've mapped her different routes on Manhattan, which I thought could look like a leaf as it sort of drifts in the way that she drifted through the city. This page is for the Boston Globe, is a comic about entropy. And, entropy is things fall apart. And in a sort of linear fashion, but I wanted to talk about those moments where things go against that, moments like life where order comes out of this falling apart. So at the start, it goes left to right. It goes left to right as coffee gets cold, your laundry doesn't pick itself up, and it continues to go left to right, and it drops, and then all of a sudden it goes right to left, and it goes bottom to top before kicking you out. So comics are not only putting words with pictures, but they're really challenging what reading means. And there's 60 pages in my notebook before I figure out what I'm doing with this. So I really like to explore this. This is a page about how water flows, and the page itself snakes through in the way a river might or the pipes might. This page is about the Arabian Nights tales, and it moves in the way that Scheherazad's name might move. This is about sort of kaleidoscopic seeing, and it's all split up in that way. I made an activity of this called Zithers for my students, where I think about how do I want you to read? And so I really think of myself a lot now as a choreographer. Like, how do I get you to move through the page? How do I get you to feel those things? And I think in that way, in choreography, like, we are immersed in rhythms before we're even born. We're hearing the heartbeat of our mother, the breathing of our mother, and other kinds of sounds. We're always part of that. And so comics, this is from the contemporary cartoonist Chris Ware, who does his comics that both have these linear moments, but they also have this sort of off to the side, frozen moments of memory. So he's got sequential and this simultaneous. So I think comics are this profoundly powerful way to represent our thinking, but at the same time, they're a profoundly powerful way to generate thinking. So we're going to end this with a little bit about process and then the new work. Like, every time you make a mark, your visual system goes to work seeing things in it, the way we see things in clouds and in wood grain or stains or things like that. So, the mark itself teaches us places to go. So at the back of my book, I shared some of the first sketches, and I like to share this because it's cool to see the sort of the Easter eggs of what I did and what I ended up not doing. But it's also, I like to see it because it shows how sloppy and badly I draw, right? Like it's a messy thing that anybody can do and probably do it neater than I can. But that's part of it. And the other reason I like to share it is because it's not a picture of my thinking. This is it. The work I do doesn't exist without making these drawings and iterating and learning from them. And I get this question, what do you think of first, the words or the pictures? And I say yes. And and it's, not just a clever little answer, but it's really true. Like that dancing between those two and having them take me places is where the work comes from. And I think it's a lot about like playing a game. And I like this quote from Bernard Suits in the book The Grasshopper. Playing a game is a voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. So we build these little boxes for ourselves and have to find our ways out. There's a wonderful comic by Matt Madden called 99 Ways to Tell a Story, where he takes a single boring comic page and then he tells the same story 98 different ways. It's quite wonderful. And I get my students doing a lot of that sort of constraint-based play. In my own case, this is a page about comics having such a lousy name. And I started thinking from Shakespeare, as a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So I have comics as I prefer by any other name would smell as sweet. And then every single panel, I'm going to do something with a rose to talk about the name that comics have. So it's this again, this play with the drawings to sort of let them take me where they're going to take me. And I'll share one last process one. This is the Scheherazade page again. I knew very early that I was going to do something with her and the Knight's Tales, and I really liked the sort of zooms in with it. And this is a page about the transformative power of stories. And so as it zooms in, I'm moving around the page, and in the middle, I want to say, by stories, I don't just mean the fabulous or fantastic, but I mean things like science. And if I was writing, I would have said that and put a period and been done. If I was illustrating, I'd have done that and then put a picture of Einstein or something there. But here I had to find like, what is the thing that keeps this game going? What is the piece that fits the next visual schema? And I didn't have something. So I was like, all right, well, when were the Knight's Tales written down? Where were they written? What was going on in science then? And I spent a long time researching on this until I came on the work of a man named Althussi, whose astronomical calculations were very significant and led to Copernicus 300 years later making his revolutionary work. And I already had a page about Copernicus, so this was perfect, right? So I play with it a lot more and eventually work it in, and it becomes this bottom little bit of the page, as you can see here. And it's like nothing in my note says, hey, Nick, you should research this obscure bit of Arab astronomy from the 13th century. But everything about the drawing taught me I had to figure that out. So I started making comics in this way because I wanted to make access to big ideas. But what it really showed me and what I see with my students is that it changes how you think. And I really think, becomes a different way of thinking, even for novice drawers, like it changes how they approach things. So I'm going to wrap this before we draw with just a few things about the new work. It's whatever one calls a sequel to a philosophical comic book, but it's tentatively titled Nostos, which comes from the Odyssey and means the delight in return. And in teaching and talking about the work, I think a lot about how much thinking comes from drawing and thinking comes from the body. And I like this quote from the cartoonist Linda Berry: "In motion, you speak the language that language is based on." Right? We learned in motion. Babies communicate through motion. This picture of my boy about 6 years ago navigating the chair legs and table legs. Like, he doesn't have to stop and say, will I fit through this thing? He understands his body and says, yes, he just moves. He just moves. So do ideas come from us sitting around, or do ideas come from us thinking? Do ideas come out fully formed like Athena from Zeus's brow? Or do they come from the mess? Do they come from making things, from moving your hand, from moving your eyes, from moving your body? And I think that's where things come from. And I've noticed in myself that I'm really good at drawing badly. And that very frequently, bad drawings. And here I was drawing a double-headed axe, and then I realized it looked like a lighthouse. And then I'm like, oh, the lighthouse of Pharos is significant to the Odyssey. And like all these sort of accidents happen. And it happens to me all the time because I draw so sloppy that it teaches me places to go. And this, I think, is an important connection. This is from this syllabus I just made from a class. I think, I think we're in an age where people are tempted to have shortcuts to get products by pressing a button. And I think it's really the mistakes and the struggles you make along the way that lead you to surprises. And it's all those decisions, all those little decisions you make. That's what makes you you, and that's what's important. And I don't think there's any shortcut for that we should ever be taking. So I continue to make these big sketch maps. This is for a 15-foot long sequence, 22 pages, retelling part of the Odyssey. Someday it'll be in print. I spent 2 years drawing the life of a not yet born baby and its first year or two out in the world. I've gave myself a constraint of circles for a whole chapter, so every composition is based on circles. And most recently, I could finish it this week, but it'll probably be another week. I've spent the last couple of years drawing a chapter on the origin of the universe, from looking up to looking inward, and just finishing thinking about the stars. So that's where I'm at. Lots left to draw and discover. And thanks for your time. And I think we're going to draw or answer questions or something, but I can't see anyone, so I don't know what I'm doing.
I mean, you're blowing everyone's mind away. The chat is blowing up with comments that people's head are spinning, and
Oh, well, I hope that's a
your
good thing.
book got off the bookshelf, and I mean, amazing, fantastic, beautiful work, Nick, from Dave Gray. It's
Thanks. Thanks, Dave. I wish I
genuinely
could
some
see
of
you
the
there.
most amazing images I've ever seen. Um, yeah, someone quoting
That's
that I must have set 10 times speed on the video. How do I fix it? You're going so
yeah,
fast.
sorry. Well, figure if I'm going to
Yeah,
do something, I might as well share a lot.
yeah.
So
So,
should we
so
draw
you're
or should
getting
we answer
across for
questions?
sure.
What's
Um,
that?
no. So you're definitely getting across. Yeah, it's a good question. So, how long is the drawing exercise? I'm sure people would love to ask questions and
Uh,
have a discussion,
I think
but
takes me about a minute to a minute and a half to explain, and then five-ish minutes to do. So I can do it in whatever order you want. I know we got
yeah,
off to a late start with the tech issue.
yeah, and
Whatever
I
you
know
want.
you're in a time crunch as
No,
well,
I'm
right?
actually I'll be okay. So I'm happy to do why don't we do the drawing first and
Okay,
then
so that
I can turn off the slides after that because I
okay,
feel like
yeah. So let's do the drawing. Let's turn off the slides after that. And since this is the
yeah.
last session today, if others are happy with that, we can run a bit over and have a bit of a Q&A as
Yeah,
well.
that's no
But
problem for
yeah,
me.
awesome.
Okay,
So
let's do it.
I have my paper here. Yes.
So you need a single sheet of paper, any size will do, whatever you're comfortable with. If it feels too big, fold it in half. The only real rule about paper is you have to use the whole of it, however big it is. If I were in the room, I would start pointing at your ceiling or something, but I'm not. I have some kind of lousy slides here that you can look at. But imagine you're in sort of an institutional looking room and you put it to music. All right. So I'm looking at these ceiling tiles and I say, okay, the ceiling tiles are going da, 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 da. And then maybe I'm at the cabinets and the cabinets go da, 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 da. And then I'm going to go to these blinds in the other slide and the blinds go drrr. Okay. So let's come down to our sheet of paper. And, buildings don't move. Well, they usually don't move. And so how do I think about time? So comics don't move either. So, I'm trying to connect those two things. So here's this page from Winsor McCay's Little Nemo from about 1905. And we see the character's in his bed. The bed starts to grow. It grows a lot. It grows a ton and then collapses. But if we whited out the content, we still see small, the panels are getting bigger, the panels are getting big, and then they collapse. So in some sense, yes, comics are like storyboards because we care about what goes on in the frame. But in another sense, they're not at all, because not only do we care what goes in the frame, we care about the size of the frame, we care about the shape of the frame, the orientation of the frame, what they're next to, what they're not, next to, and where they are on the page. So the spatial part of comics is really key. And so you can see in this, like, I didn't white this one out, but it's sort of this really fast staccato thing in the same way that I think those blinds that I made the sounds for. Here with the death of Batman's parents on the left, if you white out the content, it's this, steady 16 beat there. From Frank Quitely's drawings for WE3, it's this frenetic activity, but again, we pull out the content and we can still see, boom, all this stuff going all at once. And so for this activity, what I'd like you to do is think about your day. And it could, depending on where you are, it could be today. It's kind of early on my side of things, but it could be your typical day or a particular day. You just want to kind of base it in reality so you don't have to invent too much. And I want you to take your single sheet of paper and carve it up in sort of some sort of grid-esque fashion, like ceiling tiles, like comic book pages, that represents the shape of your experiences across the day. And I say grid-esque, like, think about that. You have to use the entire page. You can leave parts blank. You can leave parts blank in sort of the way that this has blank things, of course, but they have to mean something. So it's not like writing where you get here and you put a period and whatever's left is left. It's each part matters. The negative parts matter, and you can leave as much blank as you want, but it matters. And at the same time, I would like you to inhabit this with some sort of lines, gestures, marks, dots, scribbles, whatever, that represents how you felt or what you were up to throughout that day. So to sum it all up, you take a single sheet of paper, carve it up into some sort of grid-esque fashion that represents the shape of your experiences across a single day, and then inhabit it with some sort of lines, marks, gestures, dots, etc., that represent how you felt or what you were up to. I think is there any way to share it back to me? Like people could post it on Blue
I
Sky or
can
LinkedIn
I
or
can
I
I
can.
can create, yes. Let me create a link that people can share it back. So I'll
Yeah,
drop it in the
they can
chat in
tag me
one
on something
second.
or
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah. I'll no. I'll create 1 second. We'll have a chat to share back.
Cool.
Okay. So
Cool. And if the exercise is documented on my site there, it's all pretty easy to grab.
okay. So
Okay.
please share here, and then I'll once you come off. So I dropped in the link and I
Okay.
pinned it to our chat, and
Great.
once you stop sharing, or actually, if this was the end of the sharing, then do you want to
I think
remove
that
the?
is. Am I still
All
sharing?
right.
I have no idea.
Yeah. So no, you're not. Then you're on screen with me. Woo!
Hi.
And you can see the link in the chat. It's pinned at the top
Oh,
of the
sure. I'll
chat.
post it in.
Yeah. So I posted the link in.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah, I already posted the link for the chat where people can share their day.
Oh, okay. And so yeah, I'll post a link to the exercise if they want it for future reference.
Yeah, actually, there was a question. So as people are drawing,
Yeah.
some people were asking, including myself, if you're open to share the slides or if these slides are uh, proprietary
It's
and you don't.
it's that's a tricky. Some of them, yes. Some of them I can't because they're from the book, from the new book. So it's a little tricky. A lot of it is available on my website, so I can address that question. But I can't simply do it because it's too complicated that way. But I could make some versions of it. Yes. Um, I can. How about I see these questions? How do I post in this? Oh, I ask a question.
No, no. So you can post under chat. You can
Oh,
you
I'll
can
post under
post.
chat and then I'll come
Yeah,
back to it.
and the first image from Kevin has arrived about his day.
How can you be that fast? The timer's got 4 minutes left. How can you be that fast, Kevin? Unproductive day. That's funny. I like that. All right, so 4 minutes. Grid-esque thing representing the shape of your experiences across the day. And to Rob's question, are we supposed to draw things? You're going to inhabit your grid-esque thing with some sort of lines, gestures, marks that represent how you felt or what you were up to. Does that make sense, Rob? And anybody else?
It makes sense to me.
The
So
ceiling tile sounded like I like that. All right, I'm going to come to the Q&A. I will answer the.
oh yeah, and the way you can upload images to the link is you need to, well, of course, you're going to create a photo, so you need to save it as an image and then you can attach it to the chat.
Oh, to the
And we
chat
have,
or to that?
well, so it's also a chat, but it's a chat that receives images. So we have actually a second one here from Frank and the next one from Dave. And images are coming in.
Oh, here they come. Ooh. Ooh. Oh, hey, Christina. Guys are fast. Used to be 7 minutes. I didn't even. Hmm.
Fun images. I'm going to actually download these images as well, just to add to our.
Oh, great.
So
Yeah.
I'll share the chat afterwards. I'll put it up in one place so everyone can reminiscent about the session and reflect on
Yeah.
what they learned.
I stress this in talks. I was kind of going quick that do your best not to draw things. And I say no matter how many times I stress it, people will draw things anyway. And yes, it happens.
Yeah, cup of coffee
James, I
and
like the end of your day.
okay. Craft. And let's see if we have, in the meantime, there are a couple of questions here, so we can. Okay, so the question at the top from Hillary Bound one, if you've seen that.
Oh
So
yeah.
there have been a lot of mentions of use of AI through this conference. Your syllabus drawing suggests that you tell your student not to rob themselves of learning that comes through the work. Do you have further thoughts on the role of AI in this process?
I have way too many. I mean, I'm gonna confess I'm a bit of a crank about it, right? Like I feel like I see it coming to my university. We're spending a ridiculous amount of money on it at the same time that we're losing faculty and offering less things. So I don't see a lot of value there. I am certainly aware that there is lots, from things to like counting the stars to resurrecting dead languages. Large language models are super important. But I also feel like a lot of the stuff are products being sold to us. And I don't know. I mean, I don't doubt there's plenty of positive uses and we may see them, but I feel like a lot of the stuff is shortcut to, I don't know, I like to struggle. And I think it's important. And I think that's what, I don't know what the point of being human is, but I think some part of that struggle shapes what, I'm not saying you have to have hardships and clean toilets all the time. I'm saying the hardship of like trying to solve a problem is really healthy for it. And my point in sharing some of those things that surprise me, that happens all the time, right? Like those are sort of clear examples for me to demonstrate, but that's my work is always a surprise to me. And it may not look like that, because they're very finished at the end, but I don't know where I'm going ever. Would I go faster? I drew like uh, 500 quirks on a page, and I don't even know what a quirk looks like. Um, Once I drew one, could I have taught a machine to draw it for me? Maybe, and maybe I shouldn't be so stubborn about resisting it, but I also think there's something I'll lose. So I don't know. It's a tough one, and I recognize my own crankiness in it. Um, but I think it definitely in the role of learning, I don't see how it's beneficial at all.
Yeah. So I mean, it definitely resonates with me. I like to create visual summaries, sketch note summaries of books. And
Yeah.
I also did an experiment, and I was actually able to create one in a couple of minutes. It was more than a couple of minutes, maybe an hour, processing the entire text with AI and then generating the images, which is great, but I learned nothing. And
Yeah.
so for me, the point of creating a visual summary is spending the time with the material for much longer and reflecting on it for much longer, and that just creates a much deeper appreciation for the content.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, right? I think I'm not a sketch noter, but I had met Mike Rohde years ago, and I now get my students to do it in every class, just to I mean each class I have them teach them about it, and I'll never forget this girl who wasn't a particularly great student, and I had him do it that week, and I said, "How'd it go?" And she said, "Terrible, I hated it," but she said, "But." I remembered every single thing from the class afterwards. And I was like, so there's that the process of doing things. I think it's good to make bad drawings. Like I say, oh, look, now everybody can make pretty pictures. Well, I don't, sure, right? We can all buy things, but I don't think that's the same. I'd rather see somebody's, lousy drawing, whatever that means. And that student's work I shared, the last of them, I haven't been moved by anything more than that. And she's not a good drawer, right? She's not technically a good drawer, but she sure showed off who she was. And I think, we need to remember that.
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, I answered the blind question. We have worked with the Lighthouse for the Blind. The Tactile one, I think, was printed by them, but I can't remember. I think it was. I My colleague Emily Badix was worked headed up the Institute on Disability at my campus, and now works for the citywide organization. She's quite involved in that. So I posted resources for that for those who are interested to learn more about it.
That's good. So there's a
What else we
question
got?
here from Pierre Luc. Have you made art comic about mathematics? Did mathematics influence your art?
Um, it's an interesting one, so I'm looking at the drawings for a second. My editor actually, her early suggestion for where I go with the second book was a mathematics comic. I ultimately didn't go there. There's a ton of mathematics in there. And there's a lot of science in there more than mathematics. I don't know. I think it could happen down the road. It didn't feel like quite the right time for me. I'm interested in it. I actually just had a math professor from another university take one of my classes, and he's thinking about a math textbook. So I definitely like to see it. I will say I had a wonderful, wonderful proofs teacher. Um, and just and I've been thinking about it a lot now as my daughter does, she's 11, does more complicated mathematics. But I think about like when you did your page of mathematics, I have terrible handwriting, but my mathematics work is really clear. And it's really like the sort of making all the pieces fit together and redrawing it until it all works. That really stayed with me a long time, and I think my comics pages are very similar to that. Like I keep reworking all the pieces until I'm like, oh, now it makes sense, and then you clean it up and all, but the pieces all have to make sense. And I think the proofs class definitely was instrumental in me understanding that. And I said the thing about my daughter because like she's very clever at the mathematics, but I'm like, all right, take your time to, make sure each step is clear because that helps you understand what you're doing and, and also keeps you from making mistakes. So no, I haven't made that. Yes, math concepts get in there and maybe someday I'll actually make it. I would love to. It'd be a lot of fun.
All right. So there's a question. Okay, so there's the repeated question. Can you share your slides? They are so beautiful and
It's all
informative, I
very
think.
kind.
Yeah. There's a related question. So, have those pages, the ones you showed that are not part of Unflattened, been published in print anywhere aside from some I recognized from your website?
No. Well, the Boston Globe piece was, but the pages from the new book have not. And I don't. I've tried my editors online here. The opening chapter, which is sort of a standalone piece, I have pushed very hard for it to be released as a standalone, almost poster book, accordion book, but I've had no, for whatever reason, it may be too expensive to print. And it's been done for 5 years. Nobody's been up for printing it ahead of the book, so it's just been really slow. Been really it's an overly complicated book, and both the amount of research I have to do to understand what I'm talking about, and then the drawings are complicated, and my time is much less my own time at this point in life. So it's frustratingly slow. I'm sort of I feel a lot of pressure about it, but I don't know what to do. But
There's a
someday,
question. Yeah, but someday. And do you have? No, I don't want to ask the question.
what's that?
When your book is coming out. So that was.
No, I can't.
Do
I
you
mean,
have
I've
no
missed all
target
my
for that?
deadlines already. So,
Yeah.
um,
Okay. There's a question here. Where can we take courses with Nick?
hmm, you can come to San Francisco State. That's about all. I do. In the Zoom years, we did more of it. A little on. Yeah. It's not really like workshop kinds of things could happen, but at this point, if my university stays open, strange times, I don't anticipate that, but yeah, I right now just at the university, but certainly welcome to make inquiries and share the blind stuff again. Um,
Yeah, there's a
eh,
question here. Yeah. How have things like the tactile comic and designs informed your thoughts on the material parts of your making art, especially in relation to the way digital content becomes more free floating?
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I will say like the blind project feels I mean, it's very much a tangent to what I'm doing, but it has informed it. Like I was writing audio description for my pages, and it's brutal, right? It's really it's hard, and I made that tactile diagram because Like I was like, all right, I can kind of understand this as a sighted person who made the page, but there's no way somebody can orient themselves through all the moves that the page is making with just description. So, like it's definitely impressed upon me how complicated comics are, right? Like how, drawings are complicated, but comics have all these different levels of activity and levels of movement going on, which seem simple. Like on the surface, they look kind of simple, but they're really not. So I've thought about that, and also, my first book. This isn't exactly the same question, but my first book was made as a dissertation, so it was sort of shoved into the book format. But with the second one, I really thought about each, what it will be like as a book. And, that led me to doing this 15-foot long sequence that does work as pages. Like it works just fine as a book, but it also works if it were to be printed in a scroll or a accordion file or any sort of thing like that. So I've, with each spread and things like that, I'm really much more aware of the material side of it, even though I also work digitally. So, yeah, the tactile work has influenced it some. I do have some plans to make one of the chapters um, accessible. I mean, hopefully the whole book will be accessible through audio, but making one that could also be printed as a tactile chapter. So the graphics will be very, very spare compared to the other ones. I mean, I think people tend to think if you just raise the graphics on everything, all of a sudden you have a tactile book, and it's just not true at all. It's not even like how could you read the sort of cross-hatching on somebody's face? You couldn't do it. You couldn't, the graphics have to be really, really spare in order for it to be useful. So I'm intrigued to try it. I don't both to see how it informs my work but yeah, I'll stop there. I don't know what else.
Yeah. In the meantime, I posted all the images on one canvas. So if
Oh,
you
cool.
go to chat and you click on the link, then hopefully that's going to load everything into one canvas, and it's maybe easier
Cool.
to view.
Oh, wow. A lot of you did it. Cool. I didn't see all that. Let me see what I can see here. How do they get bigger? Oh, I see. Oh, can we,
Yeah, I didn't put in the names. Yeah, I should have copied
who's,
the names as well.
oh, well, can I share screen for 1 second? Well, I
Yeah,
can't have you talk, can I? They
no,
can't
no.
talk.
Oh, they can. So
You can
people
talk.
can join but we can also ask people to join the stage if they want. So I can enable that, and people can request to join the stage, and that can work. But
I
if
want to
you
share this, but I don't know how to do it. How do I share screen?
so you go to present anything.
Yeah, I did it. Am I sharing now?
So yeah, I'm
Oh, I don't
sharing
want
your
to share
no, no,
that.
no, 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 not that. So let's I'm going, yeah, and now share again.
Here, I'll move this off here. Maybe it'll work.
Or I
Okay, I
can share the
really,
screen, and you can direct me to the place you want
all right,
to.
let me try. I have failed miserably. I want to share this one.
Okay, yeah.
This, I mean, I would like to look at all of them, but I think, can you still see? Yeah, you still can.
Yes.
I mean, we know this is waking up, right? If the person wants to talk, I'd take it. But I mean, this is a fairly standard grid, right? But they chose to make these little teeny things and then this wedge overlapping shapes that looks a little more symbolic. And then there's all these choices. And then all of a sudden there's dots and dots with a line. And then it shrinks down to nothing in an empty space. Like the point of doing this is to show how many decisions and how many smart decisions people make in 5 minutes with my intentionally ambiguous instructions, communicated over in this case, virtually, where I can't see you and can't see what you're doing. But how much we understand and how much our visual system is doing the work. It's a fantastic example of just how much, how much capable we are. And the reason I'm going to end the share. How do I do that?
That's from Johan. I'm going to end.
Hey,
So
Johan, thank you. Can I end the sharing screen?
yeah, it's gone. Yes.
But I'll say that the reason I like to stress this activity is to not draw things and is I want people to understand how much you know about drawing beforehand. And I think if you come in and you're like, well, I can only draw stick figures, and you draw stick figures, you kind of stay in that point. But if you realize how much you can communicate with a dot or with a jagged line, and you're like, we know jagged lines hurt, right? They're sharp. And we know curved lines are soft and you can lie down on them. And we know small spaces and big spaces, right? So like the amount, I feel like that can free people who are scared of drawing, and it can also, people who are good at drawing can start to say, well, maybe there's other ways I can go about this. I have other skills, and they're all being human, right? This person may or may not be clearly a steady hand, but it's not about their drawing skill. It's about their thinking skill and their embodied skill. Yes,
Yeah.
Escher, I just see in the chat, Escher's Metamorphoses was published as a role. I have that poster, which is part of what inspired me. Thank you, Victoria. See the chat.
Yeah. So
anyhow, I don't know.
yeah, I think we need to wrap up.
Good.
But yeah, it was a fantastic ride. Appreciate your time. Sorry for the frustration in the beginning. Technology.
Not your
For
doing.
those
Sorry,
of you
it's
here,
probably my
technology
machine.
was not our friend.
No, but it worked. It worked. It seems like people could see it. So
yeah.
So
No,
good.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for being here. That was really fun. And thanks for all your drawings. I'll look more at them after, if I can still see them.
Now you can. So that's going to be there. I mean, there are a couple of more coming, so I'm going to add them to that collection. So everything is going to be
cool,
available.
awesome.
All right.
Well,
thank you
so
very much, everyone. Thank you, Nick. And tomorrow we still have a day, 3 awesome sessions. So join for that. And the replays are actually already available.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's going to be up there as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You got your map marked A to B. answer, so go on and get messy. They wanna box you in, flatten out the mind, reduce you to a data point, one of a kind. But the visual thinkers, they break the frame side by side, and all at once is the only name. Unflattening, baby, welcome to the world. So go on and get messy. Go!